Welcome back to Azure Terraforming. I think it was Plato that said, humans are inherently political. Whether you're walking the halls of Washington, D.C., or debating NoSQL versus SQL databases within enterprise IT. And part of that political ethos, that is to be human, is the search for truth. And we as humans do that through argument. That is the marketplace of ideas, where we debate and discuss, propose a thesis and support it with evidence, and then test that evidence to see if our ideas stand up to the test. I think it's important that as software developers and architects or wherever you sit within the technology space, you're aware of what it takes to make a sound argument and what some logical fallacies are that you can fall into if you let your emotions get the best of you. Now, I'm not saying I'm immune to this. In fact, all humans have the capability of cognitive dissonance, getting defensive, getting emotional, and letting these things get in the way of us participating in a sound and rational debate. But I think it is our responsibility as humans, as good stewards of reason, that we arm ourselves with the knowledge and take time to reflect on our own actions in the spirit of continuous improvement. So today I have an excerpt from a live stream where I go through one of these situations where I interacted with a friendly internet stranger. We didn't see eye to eye, but unfortunately, the debate fizzled out. We'll look at how it happened and why, and how I could have brought this person back to the table to create a more productive conversation, which should give you some helpful strategies that you can bring to your workplace or online, whether it's LinkedIn or Reddit or wherever. Anyways, I hope you find it useful.
Yeah, I don't know. Another fun topic. I sometimes get into arguments with internet strangers on the inner tubes, and I got into it with somebody who made a comment that Terraform is a compiler. That's their evidence, their foundation for their argument. And because Terraform's a compiler, it's 2023. It's kind of silly to think that somebody would be going back to paying for compilers these days, right? And you don't pay for JavaC, JavaC. You don't pay for GCC, right? Why would you pay for Terraform? It's a compiler, right? And when you have an argument, right? You have an argument, you have a thesis. Your thesis, in this case, the thesis is Terraform should be free because all compilers are free, right? Or most compilers are free. And having free compilers benefits the community, right? So therefore, because Terraform is a compiler, it should be free. That's your thesis. Now, your thesis is based on evidence that you're assuming that Terraform is a compiler, right? And this metaphor works for you. And so in order for that to be true, in order for your thesis that, because compilers it's good for communities that compilers are free, then Terraform should be free. You have to prove or give evidence that Terraform is a compiler. And so typically in an argument, if you could agree with the thesis or you could disagree with the thesis, right? Doesn't matter. But at the same time, you could question the evidence, right? And say, well, is the evidence supporting your thesis? And so in this case, let's forget about what the thesis is, that Terraform should be free because it's a compiler, right? Let's just think about it was an interesting piece of evidence that he asserted. Is Terraform a compiler? And so I just asserted, okay, I can kind of see your point. Terraform compiles plans, or it can compile plans, which a plan is kind of like a compiled artifact, like a Java bytecode, But in .NET, you got C# files, and they compile into DLLs, right? So I get that. Compilers produce artifacts. However, Terraform has this function, which I acknowledge, but it also has this function of executing that artifact. And if you think about it, what other piece of software has the function of executing compiled artifacts? So if we embrace this like this evidence, which I think is good evidence that, other compilers produce compiled artifacts. They take code and they produce compiled artifacts. That's what it looks like to be a compiler. Terraform has those attributes, but Terraform also has other attributes, such as taking that compiled artifact and executing it, right, to reach some other end. And so you got to think like, well, what other piece of software has that type of attribute? And I just, well, being very simple minded, it seems like an operating system, right, would have that, or a runtime more specifically, right? In the case of Java, you have a Java runtime. In .NET, you have a .NET runtime. The runtime, in that case, takes that compiled artifact and executes it on the operating system. Ultimately, the .NET runtime, the Java runtime is really just transforming, the compiled bytecode or IL code, intermediate language, into native operations on the OS, right? But really you could really say what's running the application or that compiled artifact is the operating system itself, right? The .NET runtime cannot run a .NET application. The Java runtime cannot run an application without the operating system. So ultimately, the operating system is really what's running it. So then if we say that, well, maybe the assertion that Terraform is a compiler is an incomplete metaphor, right? At the very least, it's incomplete because Terraform can do much more than that. Then our thesis that because it's a compiler means it should be free is not grounded on a solid foundation. And that was my point. And this gentleman, like, rather than responding to my critiques, he basically said, like, no, I never said that. Said that, right? I assume he meant he never said that Terraform is a compiler, which is kind of strange because clearly he did. And you clearly don't understand what I'm saying. And our worldviews are so different that I can't even have a productive conversation with you. And so when you encounter, somebody like this, like whatever you're discussing, and as software engineers, as software architects, as technologists, we often have to have arguments. And that doesn't mean we have to fight each other, like punch each other in the face and be mean and nasty and pull hair and, I don't know, spit on each other, but that's not what an argument is. An argument is what two rational people have when, you're trying to sort out the truth. A fight is when, you're really just out for blood. You want to punch somebody in the face, right? And because you don't like the way they looked at you. I don't know. So it's important that we as software engineers and software developers, software architects, as anybody that's trying to sort out the truth or the right, the best approach, right? Because there are many approaches, right? There are many ways of doing things in software, but we have to come together. What's the best approach for us now? That's the quintessential question whenever you get into software design questions or infrastructure design questions. What is the best approach for us now? What is the best approach based on what we know of the future, such that we can take steps now to minimize effort later, right? And how do we strike a balance between, the future potential, requirements and the current requirements of today? These are very, very common questions that come up every design session, or they should be. And you often have to debate, right? I think this, you think this, let's find the right solution. Let's find the best solution and let's agree on it, move forward. And so you're inevitably going to run into folks that don't want to listen, and they'll try and sabotage the argument, just get out of it. And in this case, the gentleman basically was using a red herring, which is something that's completely unrelated to the argument. He didn't address my criticism. He just said, our worldviews are different, so we can't continue this debate, right? Our worldviews have nothing to do with whether Terraform is a compiler, is an accurate metaphor or not, right? So in that sense, it's a red herring. Like, it's like, okay, now I have to discuss our worldviews to decide if we can have a productive conversation about this. Like, what does that have to do with it? It doesn't. And it's kind of borderline ad hominem, but you will encounter folks like this, and it's unfortunate, but you either have to decide, do you want to wrestle with that pig, or do you want to try and help him lead back to the case? On the internet, you got many options. In the professional setting, you can't just like torch them, right? So you might want to find ways to like make the conversation more productive. And like in that case, it's like, well, I understand we might see things differently, but like, let's focus on, this key decision that we're trying to make. Our worldviews aside, like, I think we can discuss this point. I'd like to hear your feedback on my suggestions on this topic. And let's see how we can move forward. Right?
Well, I hope you found that useful. I think it's super, super important that we as engineers, software developers, architects have healthy arguments and debate. That doesn't mean we got to pull each other's hair out and punch each other in the gut and break out into an all-out brawl in the conference room. Nay, I say we should have reasoned and sound arguments as rational human beings to sort out the truth, to find the best solution that fits the needs of our problems. An absolute critical skill for any engineer or technologist, and one that's often neglected. That's it for me. This is the Azure Terraformer, signing off.